Buenos días a todos. ¿Cómo están? Oh, I need this thing. Okay. So I'm going to keep it moving, and unfortunately for you all, I don't have slides, but I do have facts, so I want to share in keeping with this trend of telling us some stories and some facts about our narrative as a community. I was asked to talk about perception, representation, and the strength of unity in our community. And I think before we're getting to perception, I want to, again, share some of the facts and take a step back, a more macro-level view, an overview of our community. So, for example, we all know, I'm sure, that we're more than 62 million people in the United States, nearly 20% of the population. Hopefully, we all know that we're a young population. Our median age is just under 30. We know that we are more than a quarter of all young people under the age of 18. So we're a young population, and we're growing. We accounted for 50% of the population growth over the last decade, right? So we are fundamentally central to the future of this country. Not as many people might know, however, that we are the largest non-white group on college campuses right now today. Folks might not realize that we are a quarter of all public school students in the K-12 system today. What people might, even fewer people might know, is that we are the largest non-white group in 22 states. After whites, we are the largest, and there are 2 states where we are in fact already the majority population. Now, folks have mentioned quite a bit today about the topic of immigration and about the immigrant segment of our community. A group of our friends did a survey and found that there were great misconceptions, and I'm going to talk about our community. And I think they found even that there were misconceptions within our own community. And so this is something that might be surprising for you all to know, which is that 80% of our community that lives here in the United States are U.S. citizens. 67% of the folks in the United States are actually U.S. born. 2/3 of our community are U.S. born. And of those under 18, 85% of our community are born in the United States. These things may not be shocking, they may not be unusual to you, but when you think about the perceptions of us from other people, that's where that stands out. You heard from one of our colleagues today about the percentage of our voters in the electorate and how we were roughly 1 in 10 voters in the last election. And you might have heard from some of the economic data that we will be fully 1/3 of the American workforce in the next 20 years. And of course, looking at this room, I suspect that no one is going to hear for the first time that prior to the pandemic, because we don't have updated numbers yet, but prior to the pandemic, the demographic group that led the entire nation in small business growth was Latinas, Latina women. Now, these are all important facts. These are all important things, and as many of my colleagues have been saying, it's important to know our own stories and to be able to tell our own stories, because sadly, that's not the story that most people hear. We know that people have misperceptions about us. People overestimate the percentage of us who were not born in the United States. They underestimate our educational levels. They underestimate our average income levels, et cetera. And so they don't have positive perceptions because they attach negative connotations to those facts about our community. We are overwhelmingly seen in a negative light. But what's even sometimes more painful than that, and more insidious than that, is that sometimes we're not even thought of. We're an afterthought. And one of those reasons for that is because we're not represented visually. We do not show up in media. A study found that Latinos, that of all speaking roles, not lead roles, all speaking roles in films over the last 10 years, Latinos only held 4% of those roles. Not even talking about lead roles, just any role with a speaking part in a film. It's been documented. In fact, one of my colleagues, Congressman Joaquin Castro, talks about the work he does advocating among the publishers community, because we don't show up in textbooks, we don't show up in children's books, we don't show up in novels anywhere near our population numbers. And that's a key place where people's ideas are formed about other people. These things are not just inconvenient. These things are not just less than ideal. They have actual, concrete, damaging effects on our community. Because people pass laws. People allocate resources. People make decisions based on these perceptions. And they often don't benefit us, and in fact, they often materially hurt us. I believe that one of the things we can do to address this challenge is to increase our representation in leadership. The second point of my talk. We need more representation in media. We need more representation in Hollywood. We need more representation in print. But we need more representation in leadership across the board. Absolutely. A couple more statistics for you that you may or may not know. Sadly, folks here have done great work to point out that of the Fortune 500 corporate boards of directors, we're only 2.6%. Remember, keep in mind that we are 19% of the U.S. population. Almost 1 in 5 people in the United States, and we're only 2.6% of Fortune 500 corporate boards. We're only 3% of senior executives. Only 4% of the attorneys in the United States are Hispanic. And in education, what I call the 2-3-4 rule. 2% of the superintendents, 3% of school board members, and 4% of college presidents are Latinos. We're a quarter of the educational system in the United States, and yet we are not making decisions about the educational policies and practices that affect our community. And this goes on and on. We're grossly underrepresented in senior ranks of the armed forces, in philanthropy, in sports, in technology, et cetera, et cetera. And most heartbreaking for me, given the work that I do, my friends at the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials collected data on all elected positions, all positions for which someone had to run for office and garner enough votes to get, at the federal, state, and local level, across the entire United States. We are what percent of the U.S. population? 19. Care to guess what number, what percent we are of elected officials in the United States? We are the 1%. 1% of all elected positions. Now, while this is heartbreaking, it doesn't have to be permanent. The good news is that this is not preordained, and we certainly know for a fact that it's not due to anything inherent in us. These are systemic challenges, these are processes, these are infrastructure, these are decisions that other people are making for us, and we can change that. We simply need, it's not simple to do, but what we need to do is turn our collective focus on it and to begin to work together. Unity. That's one of the purposes of this summit. I believe if we collaborate, if we leverage each other's skills and resources, and we build a shared agenda, we have the numbers and the brilliance to accomplish increasing our representation, especially in leadership, which leads to changing perceptions about us and to changing our actual living conditions. Now, none of that is going to be easy, and we have to confront some hard truths first. For example, we have to realize and keep in mind as we do this work that we're an incredibly diverse and often fragmented group. You've heard several people reference that already this morning. Let's remember and let's educate others about the fact that not only are we not a monolith, we are folks who proceed from roughly 20 different countries. We run the gamut from people who have only been in the United States for just a few days to people who are 9th or 10th generation on this land. And they can trace their ancestors back to long before the Mayflower. There are Hispanics who are blonde-haired and blue-eyed, I think in this room, who might be confused from someone from Scandinavia. And there are people whose African descent is obvious. Of course, there are indigenous Latinos, and there are even significant numbers of Latinos of Asian descent. There are folks who identify as fully Latino and only speak English and not a single word of Spanish. There are folks who are from Latin America for whom Spanish was their second language before they came to the United States. We also must realize that we're a fragmented population. People often say that we're not one community of 62+ million people. We're roughly 200 to 300 different smaller communities who are at best at times woven together through some common cultural elements. And of course, we have to break through some of the divisions, not just the diversity, but the divisions in our community. Divisions between country of origin, divisions around first language, divisions around what region in the United States we're from. And of course, we can even overcome, I believe, eventually, our political divisions within our community. We simply need to build bridges, create relationships, and infrastructure. We need to support, grow, and strengthen our networks and institutions. But to truly achieve our goal of empowerment and equity, we also have to build alliances with other communities rather than pit ourselves against them or replicating the same kinds of prejudices and biases that have created the inequities we and others continue to face. We, like the rest of the population, are not immune to these things, but we cannot let ourselves succumb. And we have to stand up and speak out against the sexism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism that sometimes rears its ugly head even within our own community. And because I'm here standing in front of you, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to also speak about an aspect of these issues that is deeply important to me. I believe that among all of those things, especially at this moment in our nation's history, we have to confront and vanquish the negative bias that has been described as anti-blackness that exists not only in the United States, but also in our community. It's simply a manifestation of the, yes. It's simply a manifestation of the racism that everyone in the U.S. is taught, often unconsciously. And we need to do this not only because, like me, there are many fellow Latinos who are also black, and we're not different because we're Afro-Latino. That's something you need to understand. Just the way we do, and I believe you all feel a strong kinship to fellow Latinos, it's important to realize that we, those of us who are Afro-Latino, feel that same kinship for our African-American family members. I understand that there's some folks who are prejudiced towards Latinos, towards non-English speakers, towards immigrants. That's just another manifestation of the racism, of the white supremacy, of the divisions that have been created in the country. And there are, frankly, folks who are just bad people, but that's not unique to the black community or to any other community. I would remind us, before we judge too harshly, that in almost every one of our countries of origin, there has been a ruthless dictator, and more importantly, a swath of the population who either supported or at least enabled that person. And I'm pretty sure not a single one of us wants to be judged based on the worst of our population or our community, and we should not do the same about anyone else. I know at times we will disagree with members of the African American community. We may even compete for resources. That's something that simply happens in our society and our structure. But we need to make sure that that disagreement or that competition doesn't devolve into painting an entire population with the same brush, judging them all, or giving voice to these negative thoughts and ideas about an entire group of people. That is exactly the same kind of misperception, judgment, and prejudice that we experience as a population. We have to remember that. A great civil rights leader, Martin Luther King, said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." But I like to quote another civil rights leader, Fannie Lou Hamer, who put it, I think, more simply and more eloquently, which was, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." That's right. So, to conclude, my organization, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, is dedicated to identifying and developing leaders who can take their places not just in Congress, but throughout government, the private sector, and even nonprofits and philanthropy. We are and will continue to do our part, and I invite you, like all of our other speakers here today, to join this collective effort. If we unite and speak with something much more akin to one voice, and we stand alongside our peers who have also been shut out of too many opportunities, I believe we can accomplish anything. And this is important because we should realize that what we are trying to change is no small thing. It's not just seeking to be recognized for who we are and what we mean to this country. It goes far beyond that. We can and we must seek to change the systems that affect the conditions that our people live in, the laws that guide them and control our lives, and to give them and us more opportunities to live full and prosperous lives. And by doing that, we will change the course of history and make the United States the land of freedom and justice it was always designed to be, but has not yet fully become. Thank you.